Alright, so I cannot believe I actually uploaded a video that have no volume whatsoever. I'm so sorry. So I'm going to be doing a re-recording of the entire FOMC summary again. Hopefully I get everything in this time round, okay? My hair is a little messy. But yeah, okay, let's get down to this, okay? First of all, we have to talk about how the FOMC meeting, we have already solidified a 50 basis point hike into the interest rate. So now we are at 4.25 to 4.5%. Okay, so basically this whole entire FOMC meeting, Jerome Powell kind of come out to kind of just be hugging onto the SEP a lot. Okay, so for people who don't know what SEP is basically the summary of economics projection. This is a report that will come out every quarterly. Okay, when this report actually comes out, you actually get projection for the year after, and the year after that. So for right now, we are actually projecting for 2023, and which is why we are seeing such a bad crash in the market at the moment. Really bad crash, okay, because people are thinking that a recession may very well be a huge possibility now. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to be showing you the SEP. Okay, so over here you can see the SEP. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. Can I just okay, yeah, I think this should be enough. All right, cool. Okay, let's look at it. First of all, we have to look at the federal funds rate. Okay, previously, the day before, I actually posted on my Instagram saying that how the federal funds rate is going to be working. I feel that for 2023, if we actually see anything above 5%, chances are the market is not going to like it. Because Jerome Powell, basically in November, he came out in the Brookings Institute to talk about how he intend to actually go for a 4.8% federal funds rate, which is why the market rallied. Okay, clearly not the case anymore, because he said that it was going to be 4.8%, now it's going to be 5.1%. So of course, all the gains that we actually had in all those rallies were all taken out of it. So of course, with this federal funds rate, 5.1%, completely out of what we were expecting. Personally, I was expecting it to be about 4.8% as well, simply because Jerome Powell kind of touched upon it. So yeah, okay. So 5.1% for that. For the year after, which is 4.1% in the 2024 over here. Let me see, yeah. That's not it. Over here, 4.1%. Again, we were not expecting 4.1%. We were expecting about 3.7% or so. So seeing 4.1% in 2024 also means that the amount of rate cuts that might be coming in will not be coming in hard, but it will most likely only come in after 2023. Possibly. We are not sure how that will actually go up upon. Alright, next up we look at unemployment. Oh, hold on, something important here as well. Okay, change in GDP. There's only a 0.5 percentage point increase in GDP, which is not exactly good. Okay, I will be going through some of the Q&A question that was actually being brought up in the summary as well. I thought that was going to be quite important for us to actually look into. Okay, next up we look at unemployment rate. Okay, unemployment rate at 4.6%. 4.6% for unemployment rate, pretty interesting, because we were expecting unemployment rate to be slightly lower. Okay, simply because if the Federal Reserve thinks that they want to bring FFR upwards, it also means that unemployment rate should generally be lower, because they think that the labor market is still very strong. The labor market is still very hot. Okay, but clearly from this kind of point of view, that doesn't exactly show what the Federal Reserve is actually thinking. PC inflation, they think that by next year is going to be going down to 3.1. Core is going to come down to 3.5. I'm not sure if this is going to be relatively good projections, simply because we're talking about end of the year. Okay, and I don't know. Of course, hopefully we do see somewhere along those lines, but I do think that we might still see upwards of 3 or even near to 4% by the end of it. But we have to see how it actually goes. Alright, but let's get into the most important part, which is dot plot. Okay, dot plot, which is you want to look over on this side. Dot plot, pretty bad. The main consensus is that everyone is actually looking at this 5.25 level, or 5.1 level. So if all the dot plot is currently at the 5.1 level at the moment, it also means that generally everyone is relatively hawkish. You only got 2 members that's below 5%. which is the most dovish member. And even then, above all your main your main majority, you still have like another two groups of like super hawkish members, which also kind of prove that, you know, maybe in the next SEP that will most likely be coming out in March or April, that SEP might also be revised upwards, like what has happened for all the previous SEP that we actually had in 2022. So if we are worried about the FFR being projected upwards, revised upwards in 2023, which is a clear concern because that actually happened for the whole entire 2022. Okay, so, you know, that's kind of just some of the concern that we have. Okay, now let's get into the whole entire speech on what Jerome Powell actually said during the whole entire thing. Okay, first up, we talk about how, okay, Jerome Powell, same thing, he came out after the SEP. He was talking about how, oh, okay, labor market is still pretty hot. We're still going to be targeting a 2% inflation by the end of it. That's still their main target. They are going to prioritize targeting inflation. They're heading towards 2%. They're committed to bringing inflation down to 2%. Yada, yada, yada. The same old stuff. I don't think Jerome Powell actually said something out of line or out of the usual norms that he actually do say in his statements. So let's get into the questions. Some questions were actually quite interesting, which is why I want to actually get into it. Alright, the first up is that, is loosening of the financial condition, aka a good market, an issue for the Feds? You know, Jerome Powell basically say that, you know, he don't really care if we have a good market or not. He just wants to get his job done. Okay, which is to bring down inflation and also to ease off employment and unemployment. Afterwards, someone asked, you know, still, if we were to get to a 5.1% FFR, that means that we are about 75 basis point away. So for us to have a 75 basis point away in 2023, how would the speed be like? Okay, so currently we are at 4.5% effectively. 4.5%, it means that we are about 75 basis point increment all the way to the end of 2023 FFR. So that means that for the next meeting that we're going to be having in, I don't know, in January or February, the chances of us actually getting a 75 basis point increment is very, very low. If anything, it's going to be zero. Okay, because even if they were to come out with a bad projection, a bad CPI report per se, it's very weird for them to suddenly revise their entire projection upwards. Unless, of course, if the CPI that we're going to be getting next month suddenly shows 2% increase month over month, which I feel that the possibility of that actually happening is lower than 1%. I don't see oil prices suddenly just flying up. I don't see airline prices just flying up. I don't see food prices suddenly just flying up. There is no macro events that's going to be happening in this short-term period that can actually push inflation over the edge. So because of that, I feel that we are probably not getting a 75 basis point increment. So now it comes down to, could it be a 50 basis point increment or could it be a 25 basis point increment? So if it's a 50 basis point increment, which I personally feel is a lot better for us to actually get a 50 basis point increment. Okay, because if we get a 50 basis point increment in the next FOMC meeting, it means that we are only left with a 25. So if you actually put it in a different sense, like a Russian roulette sort of thing, the Feds basically, after shooting out the 50 basis point increment, they will only have one more bullet for them to actually shoot. And they can choose whenever they want to shoot this bullet out, but hopefully it's not going to be on the second meeting of 2023, which means that a rates pause is going to be happening. Okay, so how a pause will most likely happen? We do not want the pause to come in at a low rate. We want the pause to come in at a high rate. Okay, so the thing is that for the Feds, they do not want to suddenly bring it up to 5.1% and just pause all the way to the end of the year. It wouldn't really make a lot of financial sense. So what they will want to do is that at least they have this additional bullet for them to kind of just push in a little bit, to edge the market downwards a little bit whenever they have the chance to do so. Okay, so what they want to do is that, personally for myself, for my own case, I think they should do a 50 basis point increment, just shoot down the market. The market is now currently going to be at like what, 5%. Okay, and at 5%, then maybe we can kind of just sit back a little bit and say, okay, you know, market, you know, just do your own thing. Okay, and then we keep inflation down that way, because inflation will effectively have to trend downwards effectively in that sort of trend. And when that actually happens, okay, When that actually happens, then you can kind of see, oh, okay, because inflation is kind of going down that way, we don't have to pull this trigger anymore. Okay, but let's just say inflation suddenly kind of inflect upwards. Suddenly you get see a small growth spurt upwards. Then you think, okay, hold on a sec, maybe I do need to shoot this gun out now. And then because of that, then the Federal Reserve can say, okay, you know what, boom, another 25 basis point increment. Maybe, I think that's going to be how it's going to be like. But of course, Jerome Powell was like saying that the speed for 2023 will not really matter as much. Because the speed actually mattered in 2022 of how we actually got to a 4.5% FFR at the moment. So fair enough. I do think what he said makes a lot of sense because in 2023, like I said before, I think that the peak FFR and how much what's the FFR that we're going to be getting when rates finally pause would means the most. I don't think the speed really matters anymore, especially now that we probably only have like three possible scenario where the Federal Reserve can actually inject a rates hike. So personally, that's kind of my thoughts. All right, next up, someone asked GDP moderate gain, and this is also considered as a stalled speed. So wouldn't this actually be considered as a recessionary projection? I feel that it's fair to actually call it a recessionary projection, but at the same time, I think Jerome Powell wasn't having it. Jerome Powell was saying that, no, it's not a recessionary projection simply because recessionary projection would only work if it is negative GDP. A half a percentage point increase is still positive. Okay, tomato, if you really want to call it as that, sure, go ahead. I do think that if inflation were to sort of trend down a little bit in the near future, we might be able to see some form of a update for the GDP projection to go upwards a little bit. Hopefully that would be the case. Next up, a higher projection for unemployment rate. Does this actually mean that higher SEP, the higher TFR equates to a higher unemployment, or is it because the labor market is cooling off a little bit? I think this is kind of like a very baitish question. Very, very, very good question here, actually. So they kind of want to bait Jerome Powell into solidifying his stance as being a hawk or a dove. Okay, because we need to know if, you are putting your TFR at such a high rate, which is your terminal funds rate, at such a high number, 5.1% for 2023. At the same time, you're also putting your unemployment rate up to 4.6%, which we previously had was 3.7%. Okay, so suddenly a 0.9% increase, which is quite substantial. So if you want to say because of that, would that also means that increasing federal funds rate is your way of bringing your unemployment level up as well? Or is it simply just because Jerome Powell thinks that the labor market is cooling off? Then that way Jerome Powell cannot really hold on to the same narrative saying that, the labor market is still very, very hot. Okay, afterwards, of course, Jerome Powell was like saying, the labor market is definitely hot. By no way is the labor market cooling off, which is why the market basically dropped even more when we actually heard that news. And he said that, basically we do want to bring up unemployment rate naturally. But of course, if bringing up TFR is what is needed, then that's what the Fed is willing to do. So yeah, pretty bad. Next up, rate cuts probably will not happen in 2023, implied by the SEP. What circumstances would actually make that possible? I think this is a very, very good question. Brought up by, I think, CNBC. No, I think Washington Post, my bad. Yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense because we do not see any sort of rate cuts happening in 2023. Of course, like I said before, there's still going to be 4 more SEP, let's be honest. There's still 4 more SEP for 2023. We could definitely see a revision downwards for SEP for us to actually possibly see a rates cut. But Jerome Powell outright just say, don't even think about a potential rates cut at the moment. We need to solve the problem that we have at the moment, which is bringing inflation down. Let's stop trying to think about rates cut. Let's try to settle this problem at hand first. Makes sense, but of course, market wasn't exactly liking it. And I think that Jerome Powell wouldn't want to slip out this sort of softish language during this press conference because he do not want the market to suddenly feel that, Jerome Powell is actually quite softish. He actually is thinking about rate cuts in 2023. He just don't want to say it, that sort of thing. So Jerome Powell was quite firm and quite strict on it. I think that was a lot better. for them to actually tighten up monetary policy successfully. Okay, so I do think that it's true rates cut probably will not happen in 2023. Of course, this comes hand in hand alongside with inflation reports that we most likely would want to have. Okay, for inflation reports that we want to have, because right now Jerome Powell is saying that, last month, for example, Jerome Powell was saying, it's just one good CPI report. I don't think that is evident enough that inflation is actually trending downwards. So this month, which is the day before yesterday, we actually got good CPI report again, saying that, hold on a second, now that this report actually shows that, it's even better, okay? Inflation is clearly trending down even more. And then now Jerome Powell is just kind of saying, yeah, but it's not good enough. Although it is moving down, it's not clear evidence that it's still moving down. So of course, there's going to be a lot of this sort of back and forth going to be happening. But hopefully, rates cuts will potentially be actually penned in for 2023. Now, for the last question, or at least the last question I actually have written down, is if we actually hit 5.1% in the early half of 2023 and inflation start to decline materially, the FFR will be too restrictive, and is that actually built into the model? I thought that this was a really, really good question to really end it off, because we're talking about how inflation is going to be going upwards of maybe about 5% or so in 2023. And let's just say right now we are at 7.1%. And in the next 3 months per se, inflation keeps on going down. We get 0.1, 0.2, and maybe 0% inflation respectively for the next 3 months of CPI per se. That's going to bring down our year over year down to about like 5% or so. Okay, if we actually bring it down to about 5% or so, it wouldn't make sense for FFR to stay up at 5.1%, because if we actually continue in that manner, we might actually risk going into a deflationary environment. And that's not what the Federal Reserve wants either. Okay, the Federal Reserve, at the end of the day, they want to make sure that we are in an inflationary environment, but not a hyperinflationary environment. Okay, so a deflationary environment wouldn't exactly be the best for us as well. But of course, you can argue that, it's good that we actually get deflation to go down even more. But it's the same thing. Deflation or inflation, they can easily go out of control. You do not want to really push it over the limit. So it's better for them to actually just play it by ear. So of course, this question kind of say that, of course, if in the first half we actually see inflation significantly trend downwards, would there be any sort of revision that Jerome Powell might be thinking about penning down in the second half of 2023? Which of course, Jerome Powell kind of let off his softish language a little bit, and he was like saying, of course, if inflation were to actually show significant and clear evidence that is trending downwards, of course, there's going to be revision done to the SEP. But as of now, this SEP is going to be final, and this is the SEP that they're going to be looking at very, very closely moving on until the next SEP is being discussed. So of course, right now that this is all done, the Q&A is done. Let's talk about the whole entire market. Okay, since that this is going to be a re-record, I'm able to talk a little bit more about the market as well. Okay, the market is not liking this right now. The Dow Jones is down 800 points. The S&P is down almost 3% at the moment. And of course, the market is horrible. Why is the market horrible? I think it's quite evident because Jerome Powell kind of just came out to say all this thing in the FOMC. A lot of people are starting to pen down the possibility of a recession coming in immediately. Because for us to actually hit a 5.1%, a lot of people are thinking that, there is a very, very good chance that Jerome Powell can actually bring us for a softish landing. But this softish landing might actually be landed in a hellish position, aka a recession. So if we actually get a softish landing into a recessionary environment, it doesn't really matter. And that's what a lot of people are currently very, very fearful about. Of course, my entire portfolio, right now I do not really have any bearish position. All my positions are all bullish. So of course, my portfolio is down bad today. I think I'm down like 8%, 8% today, something ridiculous. But yeah, that's kind of the whole gig for investing as a whole. I'm kind of happy that I'm able to actually talk about this now, since I'm re-recording this. We can actually talk about the aftermath of what's happening to the market after this FOMC. meeting, how Jerome Powell absolutely just destroyed the market with this sort of information. But yeah, anyway, I think that's all I have for the FOMC and the SEP summary. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you to the guy. Okay, thank you to the guy that actually told me that I got no sound recording for my previous video. Alright, that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.